Good evening, everyone, and welcome. The Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority would like to welcome you to tonight's St. Thomas Open Public Forum. My name is Antoinette Fleming, and I will be your moderator for tonight's meeting. In just a few minutes, you will hear from Mr. Darrell Griffith, our Executive Director of the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority. This open forum is a chance for interested members of the community, such as yourself, to provide comments on our Amendment Number 1 to the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Action Plan. The authority appreciates you taking the time out of your schedule to provide comments, and we are here to listen. The authority staff may not be able to answer questions at this moment. The intent of tonight's meeting is to get your input. Input regarding the first amendment that will be presented tonight to the action plan, and to utilize this information to address the unmet needs in the territory. Comments received this evening will be reviewed by VIHFA, and its responses will be included in the amendment when it is officially submitted to HUD, and it is posted on our website. Anyone who wishes to speak this evening must first register at the public comment desk at the entrance. Each person who has signed the speaker list will be given an opportunity to provide public comment. When your name is called, please proceed to the microphone closest to you. State your name and your affiliation. If you're representing a nonprofit, state the name of the nonprofit. If you're a concerned citizen, state such. Now, each speaker will have 3 minutes to make a comment. A sound will indicate that you have 30 seconds remaining to conclude. At the end of the 3 minutes, time will be called, and we will move to the next speaker. If you would like to provide written comments on the Amendment Number 1, in addition to or in lieu of an oral presentation tonight, you may do so by leaving a comment at the front, or you may come to our website at www.vihfa.gov and place your comment there. Now, the comment period began on September 17, 2018, and will end on Tuesday, October 16, 2018, at 11:59 p.m. Now, the proposed CDBG-DR action plan and the public comment information are available on our website. Individuals will be able to read the amendment, the currently proposed action plan, and the comments on the amendment both in English and in Spanish. If a French Creole translation is required, we ask that you contact the office and one will be provided for you. Online materials will also be accessible for the visually impaired. In addition to the public meeting being held, comments may be mailed to the authority at 100 Lagoon Complex, Suite 4, Frederick said VI, 00840. With the attention, CDBG-DR. All comments will be accepted, as I said, no later than 11:59 p.m. on October 16, 2018. Comments received after that date will not be considered. The information I've just shared with you is printed in the handout you receive upon entrance. If you did not receive one, someone will be, if you can please raise your hand and someone will bring it to you. Finally, if you're seeking information on resources related to other disaster recovery programs, such as STEP, the Emergency Housing Repair Program, VI, a table is available at the back as well, and someone will be there to answer your concerns. Now, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Darrell Griffith, the Executive Director of the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority, who will present a summary on the action plan amendment.
Thank you all. As Antoinette said, my name is Darrell Griffith. I'm the Executive Director of the Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority. And this is the agency tasked by the governor with administering the disaster recovery grant funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD. Now, these funds will be used for ongoing rebuilding and resiliency efforts related to Hurricanes Irma and Maria throughout the territory. The authority is currently accepting public comment on the proposed First Amendment to the territory's Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Action Plan. and I'll shorten this community development block grant and disaster recovery, the CDBG-DR, throughout this testimony. On July 10th, 2018, HUD approved the territory's initial action plan, which outlined $243 million in funding to support the territory's recovery efforts from Hurricanes Irma and Maria. Then on August 14th, 2018, HUD published a Federal Register notice outlining the second allocation of $779 million. Together with the initial action plan, this proposed amendment outlines a total of $1,021,901,000 in CDBG-DR grant funds. An additional allocation of $841 million has been made to the U.S. Virgin Islands for mitigation and the electric grid. The Appropriations Act and the budget bill require that prior to the obligation of CDBG-DR funds, a grantee must submit a plan detailing the proposed use of funds, including criteria for eligibility and how the use of these funds will address disaster relief, long-term recovery, restoration of infrastructure, and housing and economic revitalization in the most impacted and distressed areas. This document is proposed substantial amendment to the approved action plan. Now, any change greater than 1% in total funding, the addition or deletion of any program or change in eligibility criteria or designated beneficiaries of a program constitute what's called a substantial amendment. And such amendment will be available for review by the public and also approved by HUD. I will now summarize the Action Plan Amendment 1. This information is very important for HUD to get an understanding of what occurred in the Virgin Islands, but it will be redundant for us who lived through it. Hurricanes Irma and Maria had a devastating impact on the United States Virgin Islands. The entire population was impacted by the devastation brought on by the storms, with winds of over 185 miles per hour and up to 20 inches of rain in some areas. The two back-to-back Category 5 storms in September 2017 caused significant destruction to housing, infrastructure, and the economy. The total damage was recently estimated at $11.25 billion, a $490 million increase from the initial action plan. Now, in the wake of the storms, the President announced a major disaster declaration for Irma and another for Maria to make federal disaster assistance available to the territory. To help address the territory's unmet need, and after accounting for the disaster recovery assistance provided by FEMA, the U.S. Small Business Administration, private insurance, nonprofits, and other funding sources, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, has awarded $1.86 billion of CDBG-DR funds to the U.S. Virgin Islands. The CDBG-DR funds are intended to address unmet needs in housing, infrastructure, and economic revitalization from the 2017 hurricanes, as well as mitigation activities to protect the territory from the damage of future events. The proposed allocations made to these programs are summarized as follows. For our program, one of the first programs under housing is a homeowner rehabilitation and reconstruction program. In the first tranche, we allocated $10 million to that. In this one, where we're talking about the amendment, in tranche 2, we've allocated $50 million towards homeowner rehabilitation and reconstruction program, in which homeowners can apply for. And that total allocation is $60 million. The second program is new construction for home ownership opportunity and first-time home buyer assistance to build new homes for people who are currently renting so that they can become a first-time home buyer. First tranche allocation was $10 million. In this allocation, it's $40 million for a total of $50 million. For rental rehabilitation and reconstruction, this is for landlords who own property that they rent to people. So the first allocation was for $5 million. The second allocation is for $20 million, for a total allocation of $25 million for landlords to get help repairing their units so that they can house people who are displaced by the hurricanes. The next is public and affordable housing development. This is for developers, the Virgin Islands Housing Authority. So the first allocation was $32 million. The second allocation is $40 million. So we're looking at a total allocation of $72 million. The next under housing is the supportive housing and sheltering programs. This is for the Department of Human Services, nonprofits, UVI, VIHFA, and other nonprofit entities. The first allocation was $15 million. The second allocation is $75 million for a total allocation of $90 million. So that's a total of $297 million for housing programs. Next, we're going to go into infrastructure. The first one is a local match for federal disaster recovery. Now, this is for all of the programs under FEMA, not all of them, but a lot of the programs under FEMA and other federal sources require a match. So FEMA will say they'll pay for 90% of a project, but the territory will have to come up with the additional 10%. So this is where this 10% is coming from. So the first allocation was $45,549,800. The second allocation is $123,256,150 for a total allocation of $168,805,950. And this match is going to go for programs that when, for example, the hospital applies for FEMA funds, this will be the match that they'll need. Or when education applies for FEMA funds, this will be the match that they'll need to cover that 10% gap. The next one is going to be infrastructure repair and resilience. So this is by FEMA, Water and Power Authority, Department of Public Works, Waste Management. The first allocation was $30 million. The second allocation is $275 million for a total allocation of $305 million. And how this is broken down, and this is all subject to change based on your public comments and your input, but how it's currently broken down is water, $50 million to WAPA, roads, $180 million, landfills, transfer stations, $60 million, waste management, neighborhood collection centers, those are the nice red ones that you see instead of having the open door ones, and that's $15 million. The next is the electrical power systems enhancements and improvement. This goes to WAPA. So that's $45 million for the first tranche, and this amendment, it's $90 million. So that's a total allocation of $135 million to the Water and Power Authority. So we have an infrastructure total of $608,805,950. Now next is economic revitalization. That's the ports and airport enhancements. So the first tranche is $23 million, the second is $17 million, and that puts the total to $40 million. And this is the one that you've heard a lot of talking about, is the dredging of the port projects and repairing our airports. The next is the Tourism Industry Support Program. That's for the Department of Tourism. First tranche is $5 million, the second tranche is additional $5 million, so a total of $10 million. We have two other programs that have not been funded yet, but as you heard earlier, we have two other tranches that are also coming to the territory. So the next two are neighborhood revitalization, small business and entrepreneurship technical assistance. We have also allocated $5 million for planning, and then 5% administration fees for the funds that are coming through. So the total for the second tranche is $779,217,000. which brings the total for the first and second tranche to $1,021,901,000. Now, Amendment 1 continues the portfolio of programs outlined in the action plan to address unmet housing, public service, infrastructure, and economic needs for the first two allocations of the CDBG-DR funds, which is consistent with HUD guidelines outlined in the two Federal Registered Notices. And the Federal Registered Notices are the rule book that HUD provides that tells us how we can use the funds in a manner that reflects the overall ratio of unmet needs. Now, housing for displaced Virgin Islands and those living in damaged homes remain our highest priority, especially for low and moderate income families. In fact, while our overall unmet housing needs represent 17% of the total unmet need, 31% of the allocated funds will be dedicated to housing programs that complement existing housing repair efforts. Now, prior to the CDBG-DR allocation, the government of the U.S. Virgin Islands and FEMA established two home repair programs in the territory. The Sheltering and Temporary Essential Power Program, known as STEP, but known locally as the Emergency Home Housing Repairs Virgin Islands, EHRVI, and the Permanent Home Construction Program. In an ideal circumstance, the STEP program would have been deployed 1 month after the hurricanes, but was not initiated in earnest until January of 2018. As of September 4, 2018, the STEP program has completed repairs on more than 5,129 homeowners out of 10,350 applicants. Another 2,168 homes are currently under construction. It is estimated that 7,500 applicants will complete the program. On August 9th now, 2018, FEMA authorized the program to repair or reconstruct roofs for homes that had roof damage from the storms. The need for roof repair prevented many homeowners from being able to complete the STEP program. This new solution within the STEP program will enable more than 4,000 homeowners to receive a repaired or replaced roof that will meet local building code. It is estimated that the roof repair replacement solution will result in an additional $300 million being invested to repair hurricane-damaged homes. In total, approximately $573 million is being dedicated through FEMA programs beyond individual assistance for repairs. This includes approximately $536 million dedicated to the STEP program, including the roof solution, $22 million under the FEMA PA program to repair public and publicly assisted housing, and $15 million from the hazard mitigation program for buyouts. Now, to address the extensive devastation caused by the storms, the Territory has proposed a portfolio of programs to boost broad-based recovery on multiple fronts. The Territory will prioritize ready-to-go projects that are expected to be most impactful for long-term recovery and viability of housing in the U.S. Virgin Islands. This includes identified housing projects that are shovel-ready, as well as infrastructure and economic revitalization programs that can best help prevent future loss of critical services such as power and water, as well as further job losses and economic destabilization. Both storms also had a widespread and lasting impact on the Territory's infrastructure. Based on available data from total needs and funding sources, the current unmet need for the Territory's infrastructure is $4.499 billion, a decrease of approximately $88 million from the initial action plan. This includes estimated costs of emergency recovery measures, permanent repair and reconstruction work, and resilience and mitigation efforts. The Territory has identified multiple infrastructure priorities that must be addressed and which directly support housing needs. Residents not only suffered from direct damage to their homes from the hurricanes, but also endured the loss of critical services such as power and water due to damaged public infrastructure. FEMA public assistance and other federal disaster relief funds will help to address many of these needs. To date, $1.05 billion has been obligated for infrastructure recovery, leaving unmet infrastructure needs of $5.87 billion. As mentioned above, some federal disaster recovery funds, including FEMA PA, requires a local match contribution, which is currently anticipated to reach over $600 million. As the amount of federal funding obligated continues to grow, the Territory plans to leverage the $168 million from the first and second tranches to cover the local match for a variety of programs, including public housing. Some infrastructure repair and resilience costs are unlikely to be completed or covered by other federal funding sources. To date, the largest unmet need for infrastructure are the electrical power systems improvements. The Territory will commit $135 million from the first and second allocations to address this need. The Territory also proposes that $305 million be used to satisfy broader repair and resilience needs, which may include projects to bring local roads up to Federal Highway Administration standards. Thus, a total of $609 million from the first and second allocations will go towards the largest critical infrastructure unmet need. Hurricanes Irma and Maria not only damaged thousands of housing units and large portions of the U.S. Virgin Islands infrastructure network, the two storms also brought the economy to a halt and caused major fiscal, business, and wage losses. One of the most severe economic effects of the storm has been the loss of government revenue, driven primarily by sharp declines in public receipts and property tax receipts. The cumulative loss of public revenue is expected to reach $576 million by 2020. Businesses in the U.S. Virgin Islands also suffered significant losses as a result of the 2017 storms that go well beyond damages to commercial property or lost inventories. The interruption of businesses and the challenges of recovery have led to large losses in revenues for small businesses as well as lost wages, especially for low to moderate income workers. This is particularly true for tourism, which is estimated to make up between 50 and 80% of our economy. The storms brought tourism to a sudden halt, with all airports and seaports closing for several weeks due to the storms. Even when the ports reopened, tourism remained low because of a lack of accommodations and the perceptions that the islands were completely decimated. The unmet need for the territory's economy is $322,766,670. This amount marks a $346.3 million decrease from the initial action plan. The economic revitalization programs proposed by the territory will help sustain and increase tourism revenue for the U.S. Virgin Islands by addressing public perception of post-disaster conditions and revitalizing neighborhoods with significant tourist visits. Given that tourism sector is especially vulnerable to severe disruption due to natural disasters, the economic revitalization program also seeks to diversify the economy of the U.S. Virgin Islands by investing in workforce training initiatives as well as technical assistance for entrepreneurs and small businesses. Such programs will help residents recap the maximum benefits of disaster recovery work, such as construction in the short run, and diversify the economy of the territory into other high-value sectors such as medical, marine, and financial services in the long term. The territory proposes that a total of $60 million in funds be used to support economic revitalization, with a focus on enhancements of ports and airports, promotion of the territory's tourism assets, and workforce development programs. The CDBG-DR funding will also be used to address the significant unmet needs for the U.S. Virgin Islands following Hurricanes Irma and Maria. And we anticipate that the funding will be made available sometime in January of 2019, that the first tranche, allocation 1, will be available in the territory. The territory will continue prioritizing programs that focus on unmet needs as additional data are gathered on damages and needs as well as mitigation, as the requirements and process for the additional allocation in CDBG-DR funds awarded by HUD are made known. As previously stated, your comments tonight will be recorded and will be compiled and addressed in the Action Plan Amendment 1, which will be submitted to HUD at the end of the public comment period. The final submission to the HUD of the Action Plan Amendment 1 will be made available for review on the authority's website. Our website is www.vihfa.gov. That's Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority. And next to me as well, it's Ms. Antoinette Fleming is not only the moderator for tonight's event, she's also the director of the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery. Mrs. Fleming?
All right, thank you, Mr. Griffith. Now, this concludes the presentation portion of our agenda.